The Premier League is going through a crisis of boredom right now. Goals scored are down, clean sheets are up, and time wasting is up, even though games are generally lasting longer. You could say the game is gone, and this is not just coming from a salty Liverpool fan. The eye test suggests it as much as the stats do. So how can we improve it? I think the NBA has become the most exciting league in the world, and one of the reasons why is the NBA has lots of rules around improving the quality of the game, making it quicker, getting the ball back in play quicker even. So I want to talk through some rules that I think could be used in the Premier League to improve the products that are currently used in the NBA. So I class myself as a fairly progressive and anti-traditionalist person. It's one of the reasons I quite like the NBA, to be honest, is that I think it's quite an anti-traditionalist and progressive league. Generally, it doesn't cling to things that people did in the past necessarily. It doesn't mind throwing out tradition and history and all those kinds of things in favour of creating a better product now in terms of making better, circumstances for players and coaches whenever they take to the court and whenever their teams take to the court. And I think the Premier League could learn a lot from this. The Premier League is definitely in a slump in terms of excitement from the past few years. So I just wanted to talk through a couple of rules that I think the Premier League could use, the NBA currently uses, that could improve the product. So I'll talk through them with you now. I have them on this lovely written piece, which will be alongside this video in front of me here. So the 5-second violation is the first one. So for those who don't know, who don't watch basketball, there's a couple of different variations of the 5-second violation. This is basically the inbound variant of the 5-second violation, which means that when the ball goes out of play in an NBA game, the team has 5 seconds from the moment the referee gives the ball to the player to get the ball back in play. And the first thing you have to do if you're a player is get the ball to the referee. So all of that is a sped up process anyway. I think the Premier League could benefit from this because I think you're seeing so much this season that, teams are taking ages and ages over set pieces. They know they've got a running clock, and that is obviously a huge issue, which I'm going to come on to talk about in the next part of this. They know they've got a running clock, and you can just, I've got the image imprinted in my mind of Declan Rice slowly trudging over to a corner. It's what I use to get me off to sleep at night, is just an image in my head of Declan Rice slowly trudging over to a corner, because it kills time, it kills the momentum of the other team. All of these reasons why teams would do this. It's absolutely fine that they would do it because the current rules don't act against it. But to me, it's a loophole. It's an anti-football loophole when really we should be getting the ball back in play as quickly as possible. Games should be lasting for as long as of the 90 minutes as possible. And I think the 5-second violation from the NBA would definitely help this in the Premier League. So that is the first of the rules that I think the Premier League could carry across. Couple of really interesting ones here. I'm going to go a bit more meta with it as well, but the second one, which kind of goes in tandem with this, and I refer to it a couple of times, that is stopping the clock. This has been one that is not sort of a stranger to football conversations really. I know from when I've been on the Anfield Wrap, this has been one that I've talked about as well, in terms of literally the clock stopping whenever the ball goes out of play. This is a thing that already happens in the NBA games. While they are 4 quarters of 12 minutes, they have 15 minutes for half time. Each team gets 7 timeouts in regulation time. It's 2.5 hours of product, and it's almost like a preemptive measure in the NBA really, that teams don't just take ages over an inbound because you have to get it back in 5 seconds, you have to give it to the referee, but also it means that time and that momentum can't be taken out of the game. The game will be as long as it is out of play, or if there's a free throw or whatever. In the Premier League at the moment, what you're seeing is, with the Declan Rice thing again, is teams using this opportunity of the clock running to take time out of the game, to play for set pieces, to make sure they can get their breath back and kill the other team's momentum. But to me, football is about getting from one end to the other as quickly as possible and scoring a goal. It's not about going down, playing for a set piece just so you can throw your big lads in the box and do that. I understand that all of these things are kind of part of the game, but lots of it is also anti-football in terms of basically just trying to win throw-ins and corners. And whenever you do, taking loads of time out the game. Goal kicks, goalkeepers take so long over goal kicks now. I'm sure there's always one keeper that Neil Atkinson and Adam Mealy always say is imprinted in their brains of who takes ages over goal kicks. It slips my mind who that is right now, but you can just imagine any goalkeeper that you hate coming up against really, who just takes time and time off the clock, and it's so frustrating. It makes it a worse product for us as football fans, whether you're in the stadium or whether watching on the TV. And I think stopping the clock alongside the 5-second violation thing, by the way, would solve that. It should be that when there's a throw in or a corner, the ball goes straight over to the linesman. That's the first thing, is that the referee makes sure the player goes kick that ball straight over to the referee or the linesman. Referee or the linesman waits there by the player, as they do now anyway, but doing nothing currently. And then the player has 5 seconds once the linesman has given them the ball or put the ball down or whatever to then get that ball in play. And it means that the ball is kept in play quicker. And I've heard like the preemptive arguments for stopping the clock being like, oh, we'll be in the ground for hours and hours. And it's like, I just don't think that's true. Like, I think that is a preemptive argument, and we won't know until you test it. But I think teams just de-incentivize or disincentivize, I should say, the minute that you do stop the clock, because they have no incentive to keep running the clock down. Like, that just becomes not a thing anymore. Premier League games generally last for 2 hours. They are longer in terms of, game time than NBA games, but NBA games don't go on for 4 hours. The maximum NBA games generally go on for is 3 hours, and that's if like it's a heavy free throw game where there's lots of fouling going on and things like that. So I just think stopping the clock, the 5-second violation, are 2 ways of really speeding the sort of crisis of boredom up in the Premier League, really. Speeding the game up, making it more about the football that we play, making it less anti-football. I'm not just being a salty Liverpool fan because Arsenal kind of play that way and Liverpool don't. Liverpool start to play it way safer in recent weeks anyway, but Liverpool still play in a way that for me, I admire as a fan. Like, I want to see Liverpool play, even if it is a little bit safer. I want to see them keep the ball in play. I don't just want to see them playing for touch and set pieces and taking ages over set pieces. I want them to hurry up, get the ball back in play, try and score when the opposition is sleeping. That is always the way I want Liverpool to play. And listen, teams are winning by being anti-football at the moment, but again, I think that's just a loophole. People are winning because they are evading tax and they're richer because of it. Doesn't mean that it should happen. So I think that is a loophole that teams are exploiting at the moment, and I want to see it gone. Less so about the boredom crisis. I'm going to start getting slightly more meta with them now. The salary cap. This is one that I think I've written pieces about before. Like, I pitched this to a couple of people in the past at sort of like the BBC and ESPN as a piece. It never got quite taken up in the end, but I feel like I can bring it back in this moment because, again, this is not so much about the crisis of boredom necessarily, but it's more about like redressing the balance in football. And loads of those, the 2 rules that I suggested at the start there are kind of like redressing the balance between like, making football more exciting again, but also like making it exciting for everybody, I think is really, really important. And what you're seeing at the moment, it's been a little bit less so this season because there's, one Premier League team from last season that's definitely going to go down in Wolves. But there's still every chance that 2 out of the 3 championship teams who came up go down. I think Sunderland will probably be safe now, just about, but Leeds and Burnley, there's every chance that they go down, of course. But we've seen it so much over the past few seasons that championship teams come up, they're not equipped for the Premier League. And part of that is because the EFL has really strict financial rules that the Premier League just doesn't have. The Premier League is so catered towards, and I don't want to sound like I'm like an Evertonian here being like the big 6 or whatever, but it is just catered towards the richest owners, and that is a problem. And one of the things the NBA is really good at, and there are some owners that are richer than others. There are some owners that still, even though they are rich, are still minge bags about it basically, and won't spend lots of money. But the NBA has a salary cap, of course, and if you go over that salary cap, it's not like you have to lose this player or do this or whatever. There are 2 aprons basically. This is the way that the NBA salary cap works. So if you go over the first apron of the salary cap, the punishments are a little bit less. But if you go over the second apron, like, yes, you can lose draft picks. You can't add players' salaries together in trades and stuff like that. Like, these are all restrictions that make it kind of hard to translate over to football. But like, they are things that football can learn from in terms of like, well, how do we stop rich owners from just running wild? How do we stop Man City from spending 80 million on every single football they spend that they buy basically? How do we stop this like just complete imbalance of what's going on in the transfer market now? And yes, PSR is working. PSR has shown that it has had teeth, but there's also ways and means around that. Chelsea are the biggest exploiters of PSR at the moment, and yes, it's not necessarily translating to better on the pitch for them, but I still think that PSR is there to be exploited. I think a salary cap could really help for those teams coming up from the Championship, especially if the EFL and the Premier League worked a little bit more in tandem around this. I think it just bridges that gap. It brings parity for everybody. We are generally seeing more parity across the Premier League, and I'm a big admirer of that, and I think PSR has made the first first step towards that. But I still think the teams at the top of the table are able to just boast so much better players and are just so much better. Like, look at the difference between Arsenal and Wolves this season. And, I don't particularly like Arsenal's style of play. And I thought when Wolves came to Anfield, that as much as it still is defensive, they still try to like play a bit. Which I have respect for, considering the sort of circumstances that they're in. So, yeah, bring a salary cap in, I think, to the Premier League. Do it the same way where, like, you're not necessarily just punishing rich owners and bringing them down to the level of minge bags and stuff like that. You can still appease your rich owners here. Some of the richest fellas in the world own basketball teams, and they're kind of appeased by what goes on in the NBA with the salary cap and the first apron and the second apron and all these things. I just think this is good for the future of football, really, for bringing the 92 of the EFL closer together, making it more fair. And I mean, if you were to bring in some of those rules for other places in the EFL, then you might get teams just generally playing good football as well. And imagine how exciting the Premier League would be if there was constantly teams, recycling up and down and not just everybody staying put all the time. Which brings me on to the final one, which is kind of like very meta, I think, for... I think it said meta for the last one. That last one wasn't necessarily meta, just more like, I guess, macro, like bigger picture. This one is very meta, which is the actual rule change process itself. Currently, what you have at the moment is IFAB, which is like the international football governing body. They make the rules of the game. The Premier League gets to sort of adapt their own. They speak to clubs when they do this, but it's generally club executives. It's based on player and coaches' feedback. But I mean, what that means, who even knows? There's a million companies around the world who base things on their customers' feedback, and you still get customers that are constantly pissed off. And we all know that we're pissed off as Premier League fans with the standard of refereeing and with the confusion around rules and stuff. Referees just aren't empowered to be good at their jobs. Like, they're not helped by the way the rules are constantly changing, the confusion in the rules, the grey areas and things like that, how just terrible VAR has been. I think VAR could have been brilliant. I think it was such a good idea. I was so for it when it was brought in, but the referees that are using it, as everyone is now, I think, wise to, are completely unable to use it. You saw it with Luis Diaz at Tottenham. That was like the prime example of how bad Premier League referees are at using this. So we need to take the power completely out of the PGMOL's hands and out of IFAB's hands, and bring the players and the coaches and these people more into this decision making. The NBA, again, manages to do it. The NBA has the competition committee, which, in line with the team owners and in line with the league's commissioner, they get like a genuine vote in like rule changes and things like that. So it's based on not just feedback of the customer or the players in this case. It's based on like genuinely, no, we were in the room and we got to have a say on this, and we think this is best for improving the quality of the product, because these are the rules that we have to follow. And if we're trying to be anti-basketball or anti-football in this case, then like, these rules will be served up to us to make sure the game is quicker, to make it more exciting, to make it more high scoring and all these kinds of things, which is, I understand people get lost by basketball scores. I think high scoring football games are the most exciting football games you can watch. I don't know how anybody could dispute that, really. Like, to me, 0-0 tactical battles are not all that exciting. If you want to find a way to get younger kids into football, it's not the Florentino Perez thing of going, just reduce the number of games. No, it's stopping teams playing in an anti-football way. It's making there be more highlight plays that kids can go and watch, and then go and watch more games, because they'll see more highlights generally during a game. So, having players and coaches being a part of the rule change process, as they are in the NBA, I think can only help. So let me know what you think down in the comments below about some of those rule changes. I've been thinking of this idea for a little while, because obviously, I'm a huge NBA fan. I'm trying to look at ways where I can kind of cross over basketball and football content always, but I just want the Premier League to be better, really. I've enjoyed that there's more parity in things this season. The salary cap thing may seem like it's, maybe a bit far-fetched for some people, because there already is, more parity because of PSR. I just think it's like the next step after PSR, really, to make sure that there is complete parity between, the Championship and the Premier League especially. Imagine if we had all these teams playing swashbuckling attacking football, and there were constantly new teams. The teams in the Premier League were constantly being recycled. I just think that makes for a more exciting thing. It may sound like it goes against tradition, yes, but that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Like, the game should be progressive. The game should be for everyone. It should especially be for the younger generation who, you know, then they don't have rubbish attention spans like Florentino Perez is saying, but like, they want to see cool things. Who doesn't want to see cool things? So more goals, more of the ball being in play, more skills and all those kinds of things. Like, I just think that's better for the game as a whole. Call me, you know, Gen Z and young, or you're like, I'm not, I'm a millennial, so you can't really label that at me. But thank you for joining me for this brew. I did a couple of takes at the start, so I actually drunk loads of my brew before we even got into it. But for anyone who thinks I'm fake drinking brews, I'm not. I'm getting worse and worse, I think, rather than better and better at drinking it during the video. But the whole premise of it is that it is the sport tea. So thank you for enjoying a brew with me. Thank you for supporting my freelance journey. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this video. Please like, please subscribe, please join my Patreon to help support my freelance journey. All of these things help. Share it with your friends, share it in the family group chat, call your dar an old fucker for disagreeing, and yeah, up football being more exciting, or so we all hope.